Heritage Advisory Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is a procedural note that this meeting will be held electronically as per section 19 of the town's procedural bylaw number 6228-19 as amended due to the COVID-19 situation. Added items are marked with an asterisk in this version of the agenda. Item number 2 is the approval of the formal agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the revised agenda?
John Green.
Moved by John, second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Hoda. Any questions or comments on the agenda? If there are none, I will call a vote on receiving and approving the agenda. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries. Item number 3 on the agenda, declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Okay, I'm hearing none. So there are none this evening. Item number 4 on the agenda, receipt of the minutes. May I please have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of September 14th, 2020?
John Green.
Thanks, John. Will someone second that motion?
Sandra, aye.
Thank you, Sandra. Any questions or comments on the minutes? I'm not hearing any questions or comments, so I'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? That agenda item carries. Delegations for this evening, agenda item number 5. We have 3 delegations this evening. May I have a motion to allow each delegation to speak just prior to consideration of the respective item? I'm looking for someone to move that motion. This is allowing the individuals to speak during their items.
So move.
Was that John?
No, it was Bob.
Oh, thank you, Bob. Will I have someone second that, please?
John.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And that carries. So we are now moving on to agenda item number 6. And that would be matters for consideration. So we do have a delegation for item 6.1. What I will do is I'll ask the delegate to speak prior to item 6.1, then open up that matter for consideration. Linda, do you want to bring in the delegates prior to me reading 5.1?
The delegates will speak to the item first of all. They will do their delegation and then
Correct.
then we'll move to the actual item.
Yeah. Have they been brought in?
Yes,
the meeting?
Jesse and Sarah are here now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So delegation 5.1 is Jesse Mysak and Sarah Mysak, residents, re item 6.1, HAC 20-011, heritage permit application for 23 Mark Street. Please state your name and be reminded that you have 5 minutes for your delegation. So
Hi,
over to
everybody.
you, Jesse and Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for your time tonight. It's very much appreciated. And thank you for the consideration of our application. My name is Jesse Mikak, and
I'm Sarah Mikak.
And she just pointed out to me that I think she has a former teacher on the call from...
I do. Mr. McRoberts. It's Sarah Hankins.
Yeah, from back in the day. So there you go. Small world. So we just actually moved back to Aurora. We've lived in Toronto for the past 10 years. We started our careers in Toronto. We grew up in Aurora. I went to Cardinal Carter and Sarah went to Williams. After that, we got careers in the city and then started a family and we elected to move back. And we were very mindful of the part of Aurora that we wanted to live in. So we've always been fond of the Heritage District in this neighborhood. So we come to you today with an application to replace our windows at 23 Mark Street. We've owned the property now since early September, so we're fairly new residents in the neighborhood. But we don't have a lot to say about the windows. We do feel our application's fairly straightforward, but I could be wrong. Perhaps there are meaningful questions that we can answer. But we wanted to say that we definitely want to come to you with an angle of respect for this neighborhood. We love the character and how the city has committed to keeping the beauty of it. And we definitely want to contribute to that. We don't want to do anything that would be viewed as offensive. So we're trying to do things the right way, but simply put, like, our windows are very old. They don't do much from an energy efficiency perspective. So we're here today with the application just to replace them. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegation to item 6.1?
So moved. John
Aye.
Green.
Sandra.
Thank you, John. I believe that was John who I heard. Second.
Sandra. Aye.
Thank you, Sandra. Do we have any questions or comments for the delegates?
John
I have a question, Neil.
Go ahead, Neil.
Hi, welcome back to Aurora. Congratulations on your new home. I just have a quick question. I see you have casements at the back and then double hung at the front. And I just wonder, were you feeling like you needed to use double hung windows to maintain the character, or did you just prefer to have double? Was that a preference?
Want me to answer that?
Yeah, go for it.
I would say that we did study the bylaw. It was apparent to us that keeping the double hung would be from what we understood, the preference of the committee. We also talked to neighbors about that as well. Casements are definitely cheaper, I will say that, but we just thought that this would be the easiest way to get the application approved and also keep the beauty of the house intact as well. So
And I, in fact, yep, sorry, go ahead.
The casements that are in the application that we've installed, those are all existing. So there was an addition that was put on the house, we were told, in the 70s or 80s, and those have pre-existing casements. They're all in the rear. So all we're looking to do is change those to basically a new window. We're not changing anything stylistically at all with those.
Okay, I just want to say that from my point of view, it's totally your choice, and I have no problem with what you're doing. If you prefer, I would recommend, and I don't know how the town feels about this, but I would say if you wanted casements, you could still achieve that look. I know that your windows from the photo, your double hungs are basically a 2-to-3 ratio. That is, the lower part that lifts is 2/3, and then it's 1/3 at the top. That can be achieved. That's not easily achieved with modern double hung windows. If you prefer to keep that proportion, you can still do like SDL bars or, put the bars on it on a casement window to achieve exactly the same look. Just your choice. I just thought I would give you that little bit of free advice, and otherwise I have no problem with this. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
But the preference is still that we do the double hung window, right?
Yeah, that's up to you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions
you.
before we move this? Any other questions for the delegates before we move into matter for consideration where we could provide additional commentary? Take that as a no. Linda, just a point of clarification, we are not calling a vote. We are moving on to matter for consideration, item 6.1.
You'll need to vote on receiving and referring the comments of the delegation, and then move on to the
Excellent,
item.
thank you.
Move on to the item. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments one final time for the delegates before we accept them and move on? Okay, I'll call the vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do you need someone to make the motion
Um,
to receive?
Linda, not according to my script.
Excuse me, Chair. No, you did ask for a motion to receive, and we have
John and Sandra.
John
correct?
and Sandra, yes.
Very good. I'm in favor.
That's Bob, that's the teacher coming out in you now that you've been reminded.
Good.
Okay, so we did have all in favor. We had none opposed, so that does carry. So we move on right now to item 6.1 under matters for consideration, HAC 20-011, Heritage Permit Application for 23 Mark Street. What we're asking for right now is that number one, the report number HAC 20-011 be received, and that the Heritage Advisory Committee comments regarding Heritage Permit Application File HPA-2020-02 be received and referred first to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. So what I'm looking for now is a mover and a seconder to put the motion on the floor for discussion.
I'll move it,
Absolutely.
Neil.
Thank you, Neil. And I have someone second that motion.
I'll second it. It's Matthew.
Hey, Matthew, welcome. Thank you. Okay, thank you both. Would staff, Carlson, would you like to speak to the item prior to discussion?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item relates to Heritage Permit Application HPA-2020-02 to allow the installation of 27 windows on the existing dwelling at 23 Mark Street, which is a property located within the Northeast Old Aurora Heritage Conservation District. So as mentioned by the applicant, most of the windows will be visible to the public streets are double hung windows, which is consistent with the guidelines of the Heritage Conservation District Plan. Staff have reviewed the application and are of the opinion that the proposed work is in keeping with the existing character of the building and will have minimum impact on the streetscape character. And because of that, staff have no objection to the application and recommend approval. And that concludes my overview.
Thank you, Carlson. I believe the minutes will reflect in this next item around the committee having any question or comments, Neil's comments in the questions to the delegates in item 5.1. So thank you for that, Neil, your recommendation or preference to stay with the original style of windows in the entire home or that rear addition as well. But are there any other questions or comments from the committee on this item as we open it up for discussion?
Jeff, can I just clarify that I'm okay with it as it is presented. I wasn't questioning the use of either. I was just making a suggestion. And so
Yep.
I just want to be accurate.
Yep, that's correct. That's how I understood it,
Okay.
Neil. Thank you.
Okay, fine, thanks.
Does anyone else have any other question or comments?
Mr. Chair, it's Sandra.
Hey, Sandra, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for the report, and I appreciate, I didn't mention this when the delegates came to us this evening with their comments and their requests. I'm just really thrilled to see, young people moving back into the area and paying, really a deep respect to the heritage. It means a lot to our community. I want to thank you, the young people coming back. It's just wonderful. So thanks for keeping that up. We really appreciate it, and I hope you have your home to enjoy for many, many years to come. So thank you very much. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Sandra. Does anyone else wish to contribute to this matter?
I'd like to
Jeff,
speak a second time if no one else wants to go.
Jeff, I'll just butt in before Neil does a second round and say I have no issues with the item before us. And to Jesse and Sarah, welcome to the neighborhood. I'm 2 blocks to the south, and Jeff, our chair, is halfway between us. Take care.
Thank you, Bob. Go ahead, Neil.
Okay, I have a question through you, Mr. Chair, to Carlson. Hi, Carlson. I just want to ask, this house is designated Part 4 as part of the neighborhood, correct?
Sorry, no, through Mr. Chair, this property is
Part
designated
5.
under Part 5, yes.
Yeah, Part 5, yeah. my mistake. So it's part 5. So it doesn't have an individual designation. My question is that when we evaluate, say at some point we evaluate this property in the future as its own designation for whatever reason, would new windows affect the scoring under architectural value? And maybe that's something we need to address when we evaluate houses in the future, because I know that we do look at windows and say, well, they're vinyl windows, they've been replaced. I personally don't have a problem with that, but I think sometimes when we do evaluate, we penalize for that, and I don't want that to happen. So I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but I think that these are all teachable moments for us, and that we should be allowing, upgrading of these types of things for efficiency purposes. And when it's done respectfully, as it is done now, we should recognize that this shouldn't affect a rating or an evaluation for this house or any house that we're evaluating in the future. And so maybe we can, the subgroup of which I'm part of, can just keep that in mind when we are evaluating properties. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.
I'll put it out to the committee one last time for any questions or comments. I'd like to say, Jesse and Sarah, welcome to Aurora. Now that you've been before the committee, I know how to pronunciate your last name properly, so I won't make that mistake again. So apologies on that. Knowing that's the case, that there are no other questions or comments, I will call a vote on the matter. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
All right.
None opposed? That carries. Thank you both.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. We can go now, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're
Thank
free.
you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, we'll be moving on to Delegation 5.2.
Jeff,
Delegation 5.2 is Leonard Lynn, representing owners, item 6.2, memorandum from manager Parks and Fleet, tree removal permit application 17 Church Street. Would the delegate please state your name and be reminded that you have 5 minutes for your delegation. Leonard, over to you.
Yeah, am I on? Can you hear me?
You're all set.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm having difficulty with my technical end of things because I usually have a secretary to help me. Anyway, long story short, I purchased this property. I had a tenant, which was the Montessori school. Unfortunately, COVID has ended that for me. We were opening up the side yard. And at the same time, I was going to add a little bit more privacy for the residential tenant, because this is a commercially zoned property, residential tenant to the east. And that's why I'm before you today. I have a replanting proposition for you. I think we're going from deciduous to coniferous, and for extra privacy. Other than that, I don't have much. My tree person was supposed to come tonight, but he couldn't make it. I think he had an emergency. Some trees came down yesterday. And that's about all I have to put forward.
Thank you, Leonard. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegation to item 6.2?
I move. John Green.
Thank you, John. Second?
Yeah, aye. I'll second
Thank
it.
you, Sandra. Any questions or comments for the delegate this evening?
Jeff, I have a question.
Yeah, please proceed, Bob.
Thank you. Leonard, I believe you just said that you were the owners and and you had previously some tenants, and I'm looking on page 28 of our 93-page agenda that has a letter dated July 17th that Lori Chapman and a second person that I won't try to pronounce claimed that they were the owners at that time. So are you just recently the owners, or?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I wish I had that date for you. I think it was the early part of August.
Okay. Thanks very much.
I was hoping to get in front of you guys before now. And again, I thought I had a tenant at that point.
Great. Thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have a question, John Green.
Please proceed, John.
I'm just curious, Leonard, the trees that you're removing, they're all deciduous, and I see you replacing them with coniferous trees, or most of them, one. Is there any? Did the arborist suggest this, or is it something that you or your new owners would like to see?
A little bit of both. Like this Frederick Allen, who's well known by the town. It was his suggestion for the eventual. I think that they're fairly mature trees we're putting in. So for the privacy and for, I'm assuming, at the time, the lack of cleanup and stuff like that for the tenant. And there was no grass growing or anything down in the back of that property for the kids. Like I said, this is all for them. And now I still want to proceed that methodology, but I had no choice like that. I relied on my contractor for the choice.
Yeah, I agree. About the cleanup.
I'm not adverse to putting something else in if the Heritage Society feels the tree grows better, that looks better,
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Does anybody else have any questions or comments before we move for discussion to the matter?
Sure, I have a question. It's Neil.
Go ahead, Neil.
Hello, Mr. Lind. I just want to first acknowledge your Portraits in Giving recently and congratulate you on that. And I have a question. Pardon me?
I said thank you.
No, you're welcome. I have a question about the application, and there's a sketch at the bottom of the application of the house. Now, the north arrow, I find it confusing.
Okay.
So the north arrow is pointing to the top of the page, and the house, I guess, is in the. It seems upside down to me. Can you confirm that?
The house is in the north quadrant, and the trees will be in the southern part of the property.
So where the tree, from the diagram, and then I went on to Street View, Google Street View today to understand it better. Is this a plan view, or is this a
Google Maps? I believe it's Google Maps.
No, I mean the sketch you made. Is it a map view, or is it a sort of an elevation view? It's a map view. It's a map view. Okay, so the house is in the north end. So the north arrow on the drawing is incorrect. I'll just assume that then.
Well, that's just since they use Google, you get the Google.
No, I'm looking on your application, not Google right now. I'm just looking at the sketch on your application.
That's what I'm looking at too. There's a little balloon there that has nothing to do with where I'm putting trees.
No, it's not the Google. It's on your application file, which is page.
Is that 29?
29.
Yeah, I'm looking at the HTML version. I don't know what the agenda page is. But it's drawn in ballpoint pen, it looks to me, and it shows the house, and then the driveway, and then the trees. Anyway, I think I understand that you have the house on the east side of the property, the street is the north side of the property, and the driveway is on the west side of the house. And the driveway ends at the house, and the trees are behind the fence that borders the end of the driveway. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's really all I wanted to clarify. Thank you. Sorry
Okay.
for the confusion.
No problem.
Any additional questions, comments, clarifications for the delegate this evening?
Jeff, Matthew Kinsella here.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Question for Leonard. You mentioned that you were going to be bringing in some mature trees, because I noticed on Google Street View that the canopy of the deciduous trees right now actually blocks a lot of that building to the south, which is nice given the fact that we're going to be building that library square, and sort of screening that building would be nice. What do you consider to be mature trees? Because I've planted a lot of trees myself, and there's
whatever. I guess I can go up to whatever a scoop can handle, right? Like whatever what do they call, tree spade can handle. I guess
we're going to be bringing like a spade truck in and dropping in.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it'd be a spade truck.
Okay. I just, because when you look at it on the street view, it does create a nice canopy backdrop to that building. So I'd hate to just see 8-foot trees there afterwards.
So the southern.
They are big trees there now, so I was just curious as to how
what building to the south are you referring to?
just the condo building that's to the south. I guess it's on Gurnett.
The apartment building, yeah, with the steel roof, yeah.
That's right, yeah. So it's just nice that it is kind of screened from the street view. So, but anyway, that's my only comment.
Yeah, the property does drop off.
It'll be very blank once that foliage is gone. That's it. My only comment.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, clarifications, I will call a vote. Last opportunity if anybody has any questions for the delegate. Okay, I'll call a vote. All in favor on receiving comments?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries. So we'll now move into the matter for consideration. So we're moving into item 6.2, memorandum from manager Parks and Fleet tree removal permit application for 17 Church Street. One, that the memorandum regarding tree removal permit application 17 Church Street be received, and that the Heritage Advisory Committee comments regarding the proposed tree removal permit application for 17 Church Street be received and referred to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. May I have a mover and a seconder to put this motion on the floor for discussion?
Jeff, I'm happy to move it, or second.
I'll take Bob, as I saw you first, and the second.
I'll second it. Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
Could I ask a question before we get into discussion? Through you, Mr. Chair, just a procedural question to Linda. In my recollection, which is perhaps fuzzy, on occasion we would get motions or recommendations rather from in our staff reports to make comments to staff for consideration, but quite often we used to get recommendations that would be the Heritage Advisory Committee recommends to council. Is it now the protocol of council that committees cannot make recommendations to council, that they just simply always give comments to staff for consideration?
Yes, that is the process now. So, and the committee's comments will be included in a staff report to general committee and then ultimately to council for endorsement. But there's no direct recommendation from the committees anymore.
Well, I think that's a shame, but thank you very much for clarifying. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Bob.
Can I, through you, Mr. Chair, just to follow up on that, if that's
Yes,
okay,
please,
to you, Mr. Chair,
Councillor
to
Humphries.
Linda.
Yep.
The one thing I do know is the comments are taken, but then staff provides a recommendation to council, is what I've observed. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, via the general committee report. So staff will collect and share the comments in the advisory committee section of the general committee report.
Right. And then have a recommendation, a staff recommendation, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So the comments are definitely shared with council
Oh, yeah.
and
Mr. Chair,
appreciated.
one last comment from me would be that once upon a time, we actually voted on the items before us rather than just simply providing comments. I kind of missed that.
Yeah, same here. I find it really.
But, there we go. I'm quiet now.
the same way. I'll be quiet too. Thanks.
So I will move back to the item for consideration and ask if staff has any comments on item 6.2.
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff do not have any comments on this application.
Thank you, Carlson. Does the committee have any questions or comments? Matthew, I do. Sorry, I was going to say, Matthew, I do agree with you that the size of the current trees are substantial, and replacing them with trees that may not be even close to the size of the current trees that really do make up the fabric of the community and provide essentially what many new neighborhoods in Aurora don't have. That is of concern to me as well. Bob, were you going to provide a comment as well?
Sorry, I was just going to say I don't have an issue with this proposal.
Okay. Any other questions, or actually any other comments or discussion points on this item?
Yes, John Green, Jeff, through you.
Please proceed, John.
As has been mentioned earlier, and this is a comment, looking at the hand-drawn diagram and the Google map from above, it would appear that the deciduous trees that currently occupy the backyard, they were dispersed over the backyard itself. And when I look at the placement of the new coniferous trees, they seem to be along the boundary. And I'm just, that opens up the backyard. I'm just wondering whether that was the intent, to open up the backyard rather than have these larger trees there, which somebody commented earlier provided a really good screen, and also the trees being somewhat mature provided a nice view of the property, whereas now smaller trees and being coniferous and opened up the whole backyard, the view, I guess, will be extended beyond the backyard, but maybe the view is not as attractive as a nice stand of trees. Just a comment.
Thank you, John. Any other comments?
Neil?
Go ahead, Neil.
Thank you. I have a question for Carlson, through you, Mr. Chair. The new trees, once they're planted, will they have the same heritage protection as the trees we're removing, or will they now? Will we now be sort of, I don't know what I can say, but will we be throwing away protection for, is it 3 or 4 new trees that could be taken down without our knowledge or any contribution to the character of the neighborhood, as it were?
Carlson?
Through you, Mr. Chair, even though they are new trees, they are still subject to protection under the town's tree bylaw, because the town's tree bylaw clearly states that any tree removal on a listed or designated heritage property does require council's approval.
Okay, and so the trees that are being planted will qualify for that protection. In other words, no matter what the girth of the trunk or whether they're multi-stemmed or whatever, I know that there's in the tree bylaw, there are sort of caveats that allow you to take trees out, such as 2 trees per year, or at a height of 54 inches off of grade. If the tree splits into 2 or 3 stems, you can remove that as well. And so I'm just curious whether heritage kind of overrides all of those things in the basic tree protection bylaw. And it's just sort of piggybacking on Matt's question about whether the trees will actually be substantial and provide some contribution to the streetscape and the character, but not only that, will they actually override those other loopholes or caveats in the existing bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, that's correct. So the heritage protection overrides the other provisions in the tree bylaw. Although the town does allow the removal of 2 trees in a 12-month period, if those trees is a heritage tree, then it still requires town's approval, and it still has to go through this heritage process.
Okay, thank you. And so I'll just provide some comment, and I see that it does say here that the Heritage Advisory Committee's comments on this application should be based on the impact on the heritage character of the neighborhood, not the physical condition of the tree. So, I mean, I do believe that, I think I'm going to echo many comments that these trees do contribute because of their size, their canopy, and because of the nature of an older neighborhood having a lot of mature trees, in it. So I do believe they do contribute. I'm not in favor of removing all of them. However, the Norway maples seem to be problematic, and I know that that's not a heritage issue, but I'm okay with removing the 2 Norway maples because I know firsthand that they're kind of a nuisance, and if Mr. Lind is willing to meet us halfway and plant 2 indigenous or whatever's recommended on the trees list, which is quite extensive, then I'm happy to do that. And I think that we can find a happy medium and save a couple of mature trees because they seem to be disappearing in this part of town at a rapid rate, either through disease or development. And I'm happy to hold on to 2, and I'm happy to let go of the 2 that really don't have any intrinsic value in terms of the canopy, that may be a nuisance to other species that could flourish. So that's my 2 cents on that. So number 1, the locust should stay, and number 4, the silver maple should stay, but I'm okay with the 2 and 3 going away. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Neil, I don't pretend to be an expert in trees, but I do agree with you when it comes to the heritage value of the trees in the neighborhood. Any other comments or questions on this matter? So if there are no further comments, I'll call the vote on this matter. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And that carries. Moving to item 6.3, HAC 20-012, potential conversion of the Petch House. Matter for consideration is that the report number HAC 20-012 be received, and that the Heritage Advisory Committee comments regarding the conversion of the Petch House to a wedding chapel be received and referred to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. May I have a mover and a seconder to put this motion on the floor for discussion?
Aye, I'll move that.
Sorry, was that Hoda?
Yeah.
Thank you, Hoda.
I'll second that.
Second. Thanks, Matt. Would staff like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Patch House building, which is located immediately adjacent to the Aurora Senior Center on John Westway, has been vacant since it was relocated to this location in 2012. In the past, the building had been used several times for marriage services. So on February 27th, 2019, Council requested staff to investigate the feasibility and costs for the building to be converted permanently into a wedding chapel. And a report containing some options was brought to Council for consideration. Option 1 is that the building be converted into a wedding chapel with no upgrades. In this case, the building will, the wedding chapel will have to be closed during winter because it does not have any heat system, and that the maximum occupants in the building can only be limited to 10 people. And another option is that the building be upgraded with lighting and an HVAC system, which will allow the building to operate as a wedding chapel on a year-round basis. And the maximum number of people permitted in the building will be increased to 50 people. However, the cost for the upgrades will be around $35,000. So Council decided to put this item on hold pending comments from the Heritage Advisory Committee on these options. And that's why we're here today to discuss about this proposal. And that concludes my overview.
Thanks, Carlson. Does the committee have any questions or comments on this matter?
John Green.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, I'm happy that at last it's been given an official designation, if you will, because over the years, although it was rescued and rebuilt, and now it's been sitting where it has been sitting for the last few years with no official designation. It's been, as Carlson said, it has been used several times in the past, one as a chapel and one as a gathering place for, I think, hot chocolate for the Arboretum and whatnot, but nothing really concrete, no title's been given to it. So I'm very happy that at last it has a title, if you will, or an official use.
Thank you, John. Any other questions, comments on this matter?
Bob has.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. So I'm in favor of converting this to a wedding chapel, but then that's just a comment. I would agree with staff's concern on parking. There'd have to be a close look at scheduling, what's on at the town hall, what's on at the senior center. Can we really fit people in for parking for a wedding? Excuse me. I'm looking at page 36, and this isn't really a question that's looking for an answer, I guess, but I find it interesting or strange that only 10 people are allowed in there at a time currently, but if there's electricity and HVAC, then we can go up to 50 people. If it was I'm just not sure what benefits electricity and HVAC have to crowd size. I can understand that more people, the warmer it might get, but it just seems strange. I'm not after an answer. That's just a comment. So I'm in favor, except parking concern. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I do, Neil.
Yep. Go ahead, Neil.
Okay, so bear with me. I have a lot of questions. And through you, Mr. Chair, to the planner, Carlson. I know you sent me that report this afternoon, and I did go through it. But I just want to review, like the codes have all been reviewed, and some of them we sort of slip by a margin in terms of access, egress is fine, fire safety compliance. Are we okay with this? Do we have to install any fire safety other than what's there in terms of, I saw there were exit signs from a photo. No need for any other kind of sprinkler system or anything like that. Can you confirm?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this was reviewed by the building division, and based on the building code requirements, all they're required to install is really just the electric service and also the heat system. If the town wants the chapel to run it on a year-round basis. And if we only want the chapel to run on a seasonal basis, meaning that it's going to be closed during winter, under the building code, the town doesn't even have to install the upgrades that I just mentioned.
Yeah, okay. And so in terms of the HVAC system, what type of system is that?
Through Mr. Chair, so that will consist of the heat, ventilation, and air conditioning, is my understanding.
I know, but I mean, is there a furnace? Is there I mean, I understand there's different styles of heating and air conditioning, and I'm just trying to get a sense of what they're going to be installing inside and what they're going to be attaching it to and what you're going to see and what you're going to hear. And because it's all open. And so it may require, I mean, it may or may not require some either modifications or additions in terms of closing off a distribution unit, or is it merely just a, what are they called? You know, a ductless air conditioner that has a heat pump attached to it that is fairly innocuous. And there's also, you know, I'm concerned about penetration to the building envelope, not necessarily the exterior penetration, but where it comes into the building. And if we have these precious 19th century logs that are going to be, you know, penetrated for either a coil or a, you know, the distribution of the, however it works with the compressor, there are things that go into the building, also with the, less so, but also with the electrical components. So, I mean, I just want clarity on that. You know, are we running a duct system? And are we attaching it to the beams that are there? Or, you know, and are we going to have an air distribution unit in the attic that we'll have to close off? And how are we going to close that off? I don't have a sense of the scope of work here and how that's going to impact the heritage elements. Because basically, the exterior of the house is all new material, and you know there's no concern there. But the inside is, I guess, the showpiece, and we should be concerned about how these installations are going to occur, and how they will, and who will be overseeing this as well, and making sure that, you know, well, the guy already drilled the hole through the wall and it went through the log, and so be it. We have to go forward. So if we have more clarity, that would be great.
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point, we don't have this level of detail from the building department yet. But when this time comes, building department will definitely consult heritage staff to ensure that whatever system that's going to be installed will have the minimum impact on the heritage elements of the building. But at this point, we really don't have this level of detail. I can definitely consult the building departments and try to get this information for the heritage committee members.
Okay, and so regarding thank you for that answer, and hopefully we can understand. I mean, because once it's done, it's done. And, you know, from a comfort point of view, if someone's trying to have their wedding and there's an air conditioner running that's making a lot of noise, it's not a great experience at the end of the day. And so not worth the effort. Is there any cost associated with this in terms of furnishing the interior, seating, etc., for a wedding ceremony, or is that something that's brought in as necessary and removed? And is this a future cost that we'll have to bear as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding is the only cost for the upgrades is really for the heating system and the electrical services. Building department has not identified any additional costs associated with the upgrades. But as I mentioned, if we do decide to go with the other option for a wedding chapel that will only operate on a seasonal basis, then that will not require any upgrades at all.
And I understand that, and I'm more concerned about the upgrades and how they're handled and what they would be. But I'm also concerned about the cost because it's coming out of the Heritage Fund, and we rarely ever sort of make these kinds of decisions on this committee or comment on them as we are now. But there is a cost implication here that we are responsible for influencing. Now, and you may or may not know the answers to these questions, but I can see from the town site that we're only doing weddings 1 day a week. Will this increase the frequency in which we offer weddings? Are we not meeting our, the demand, and we need a secondary space? And if this is to be a financial expenditure, is there any sort of financial gain over the long term with this? And none of this is here for me to sort of inform my decision. And I know that weddings are fairly new in the town of Aurora, civil weddings, I should say, or civil unions. They're about 5 years old now. So just wondering how that's going and why we need a second space. And let's see what else I have to say here. So just regarding the Heritage Fund, our decision here will impact the spending of the Heritage Fund. I've been asking about this Heritage Fund for about 3 years now, and now I finally find out what the balance is or what we have, and I'm just curious, does the Heritage Fund get spent without any kind of, is it a common thing that we're spending on heritage things and that we don't know about? And would this have proceeded without coming to this committee if council had not put that on the motion however many years ago? To you, Carlson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it really depends on the amount of the expense. For example, currently, we do issue heritage plaques on a regular basis to property owners to listed or designated heritage properties. And for those expenses, usually it doesn't get reported to the Heritage Committee. However, for greater expense such as this one, typically staff would definitely run this through Heritage Committee before spending the money from the Heritage Reserve Fund.
Okay, so just to follow up on that, and I don't know how much time I have left. I haven't been watching, but so we're basically indirectly making a financial decision tonight, or at least influencing a financial decision, because the funding, the costs are laid out in this report specifically, and so I feel a little bit. What's the word? I don't know if I feel a little bit nervous, I guess, is one thing, but also, I don't have all the information to make this decision if we have an actual cost associated with this. And on top of everything else, it seems like a lot of this is ambiguous in terms of how it's going to play out. And I don't question, and I actually question the need for a second wedding venue when civil ceremonies take place in the from what I understand in the council chamber, and isn't that the whole point of a civil ceremony? And if you wanted something with some you know, some kitschy themed wedding, you would find a spot that suited your theme. And whether or not the town should be providing that, I question that, because it's a very specific thing. And, you know, there are a few issues with the venue itself. It doesn't have washrooms, but we have a solution for that. But it's not ideal. We have parking issues, but they're not ideal. There's an 8-inch step down from the door into the space because there's no finished floor. It's just a concrete slab with no level floor when you walk in. So there is a AODA issue there as well that we can get by, you know. So personally, I'm having a lot of apprehension about recommending that this be used in this fashion. I think the location of it, the site plan, you know, really is restrictive in terms of what you can do with it. And that's a decision that was made well beyond my existence in this town. And I don't know, like maybe there are other uses for it, but we're being hindered by where it's located. And maybe there's something else we need to do and focus on. So to be clear, I don't support this.
Thank you, Neil. Carlson, do you
Thank
want to
you.
respond to that, or does anybody else want to contribute to the conversation at this point in time?
I have a couple of questions to you, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Sandra?
please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. Just sort of in terms of what Neil's just stated, perhaps we can get a little more information before we can make a real wholesome response. Because I did hear some things were a little concerning in terms of, you know, HVAC being installed and what that implication will be to the building. Inside, to Neil's point, is where you've got all the, you know, the real heritage significance, right? And it's true about that floor. It's not even. So what's going to happen there? So maybe unless there's a real time sensitive requirement here, maybe through you, Mr. Chair, through Carlson, maybe we can go back and ask a couple more details. So we understand like the real impact if we do change this to a chapel and what that would mean. So we're giving a lot of feedback based on what we think, but we don't really have a lot of those final details yet, right? So do you think that would be a problem? You shared it to Carlson that perhaps we understand exactly what the HVAC is, you know, what the interior is going to look like, what the plan could really be. I see a cost of $35,000. I'm sure it's an estimate. But I think even, not just in hearing what some of the comments, I think if it can come back and there's no huge time sensitive issue, I think I'd appreciate that we're looking for a bit more detail, if that's okay. At this point, it's kind of hard to support. I love the idea. Like, sorry, not to. I like the idea. I like the thought of it because it's lovely. There really isn't a use for the Petch House. We're all trying to figure out what to do with the Petch House. We were so happy to try to pull it together. It's been used for the tree lighting event, and we've had things happen there. But other than that, not too much. So yeah. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Carlson. Your thoughts about, you know, is this time sensitive and can we come back with maybe some more detail?
Carlson?
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff can definitely go back and have a discussion with the building departments to get all the information requested by the Heritage Committee members and bring back a more comprehensive report with additional details for Heritage Committee's consideration.
Sure, I appreciate that. You know, you heard what we said, like with the parking. I think Mr. McRoberts mentioned that, and then some of the concerns from a heritage perspective and the implications of the actual material and what would happen there. So that would be great if it can come back with more detail. I think you'll have more of a feel of what this committee would want, I believe. So that's it. Thanks. And if I could, I don't know if we're allowed, can we make a motion to refer this back to staff? For more information at another meeting? Is that appropriate? I don't know.
Linda?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is appropriate, yes.
I'll wait.
Sandra,
Perfect.
Sandra, would you like to make the motion?
I sure would, unless there's other people that would like to speak to this item beforehand. Maybe when everyone's through speaking, I'd like to refer this back to staff for more information so that we can provide a wholesome response back if this is the case. So if anyone else is interested to speak, otherwise I can make that motion.
I'd like to speak again, but I'll let anyone else who wants to speak before you get there.
I don't know if I can't remember if you can speak to a referral motion. So maybe I could speak before it's moved in case I'm not allowed to after it's on the floor. I would agree with the points that Neil has brought up. I wasn't thinking at all about the noise factor. So if we do refer this back to staff, perhaps that could be one item of information that comes back to us, that if there is to be an HVAC system, if council feels that need, there's certainly going to be a noise factor, along with butchering the insides of the building, which may or may not look appropriate. I'll just mention another possible use would be a welcoming center to school classes and whatnot that might be visiting the Arboretum. And I would also echo Neil's comment of, is there really a shortage of wedding venues in the town of Aurora during the winter that would require the town to feel the urge to put in a heating system to accommodate weddings in the cold months? Perhaps we could save on the HVAC and the noise factor and simply put in electricity in case there are clouds during the summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Neil, I believe you had one comment before we consider Sandra's motion.
Yeah, and thank you, Sandra, for and Bob for that as well. But thank you, Sandra, for deciding to refer this back. I think that's a good course of action. But I just want to reiterate that what I'd like to see is the case made for having a secondary space that we need to maintain when we already have a venue that's, the council chambers only used basically once a week, or for other odd meetings once in a while, for weddings that only occur 2 weddings per week. Does the revenue stream for that and does the demand require that? So basically the business case for this, and I know that's not a heritage thing, but it's heritage funds. So I think that we require more information, more of a socioeconomic case for this. But I'd also, if building staff could maybe delve a little bit deeper, and I know that the cost estimate is a few years old, delve a little bit deeper into the equipment, the estimates, first of all, but also what equipment they would specify, even if it's just narrowed down to maybe 2 or 3 options. So at least we have a better idea of what's involved. And, those specifications usually come with, BTUs and all kinds of information in terms of sound output and those kinds of things that are concerns for an event space. And also very much a concern in our case that it's a heritage interior. And there was something else. Yeah, I think that's all. I'd like to see those 2 specific things. Maybe I know that there's some back and forth with the senior center regarding the washroom. I mean, I don't know. I know it's more money to solve that issue. I don't know that where it's located, it can be accommodated if we decide that it's worth spending more money. I'll let you decide whether or not that's something you want to explore for us. I mean, anything that can just make it more attractive, not only to me, but to someone who's a potential customer. And I think that there is possibly potential as just if we can upgrade it to the point where it's not just a wedding venue, but it's actually a venue for small, wedding and its reception or something. I don't know, but I'd like to know that if we're going to invest either now incrementally for the future, that it's a worthwhile cause and not just, something that's nice to do. Things that are nice to do are nice, but we have to be responsible with, it's a town asset, first of all, and we have other heritage assets in the town that require attention. And so I want to make sure that what we're doing is prudent financially and strategically, and also from a heritage aspect. And that's all. I maybe flogging a dead horse at this point, but I just want to make sure that this is something that we do, when we do support it, we all believe in it. And we believe it will work, and we believe that it's worth the effort and the expenditure. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Go ahead, John.
I have a question for Carlson. Carlson, looking back at the decision to resurrect, if you will, the Petch House from what it was to what it is, at that time, I think it was the early 2000s, was any use put forward at the time other than just to resurrect, if you will, a heritage style building that, like the first settlers in Aurora, or Witcher Stoville, I think it was at the time. Do we know, was there any reasons put forward as to why we should do this other than resurrect the building? Was there any foreseen or recommendations to use it for other purposes? Do you know that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is back in, I believe it's 2014, the town's corporate communication department did launch a 4-week campaign in the town's notice board and social media, asking the public to provide suggestion. And this was actually a direction from council to do that. And we received a lot of suggestions, including turning it into a meeting room, a yoga facility, tea room, etc. I think the reason why we decided to proceed with the wedding chapel option is because the building had already been used as a wedding chapel several times, and council decided that maybe because council thought that was a successful use of the building, so they continued to go with this option, and that evolved into today's discussion.
Thank you, Carlson. Any other questions or comments on this matter? So for matter for consideration number 6.3, there was a motion from Sandra. Sandra, would you like to provide an overview, quick summary of the motion that you're proposing on this matter? Then we'll put it to a vote.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I'd like to do is have this referred back to staff to address some of the questions and comments of the hack. And, you know, I don't think a lot of us were against the wedding chapel. It was more the impact of converting that into a wedding chapel, or, you know, the impact of the true heritage inside the building, and to have a little more thought process into, you know, I'm dragging this out a little bit too much, but really the motion's to say, refer back to staff to look at all the questions and concerns of hack, and to come back at a later date with further details. I think that's the best way, through you, Mr. Chair, the best way to go about it, so I don't muddle the waters. And when it comes back, we can discuss as a committee then.
Excellent. Can I have somebody to move that motion that Sandra has put forward?
I'll move that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Sandra,
yeah, go ahead, Linda.
Sandra moved the referral, so we just need a second.
Okay. Hoda, would you like to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Linda, I'm assuming we put this to an all in favor, all opposed? Any opposed?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
I'm not opposed. I just think it's too vague, because it's just more information, but we don't know what we haven't specified what we're looking for. So that's my only opposition to that. And I want to vote for it, but I just feel like it doesn't really say anything other than just give us the information, some more information. But, you know, I know Bob spoke and I spoke about, you know, the parking and the noise and the thing. So can we just address what they are, the HVAC, the some of the logistical issues that were brought up, or not? I mean, that's
Yeah, no,
It's a good point. Linda, just under as a procedural matter, is there an opportunity or a mechanism for us to approve this motion pending further discussion of the Heritage Advisory Committee or in collaboration with Carlson so that Neil's comments can be reflected in the actual motion?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think it is enough to say, as Councillor Humphreys highlighted, that this motion or report be referred back to staff for more information and to address the questions and concerns of the Heritage Advisory Committee. I'm sure staff has made note of all your comments and concerns, and some of that will be highlighted in the minutes as well. So I don't think it's necessary to detail every item in this referral.
Okay. I guess we'll see when it comes back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Sandra moved the motion, Hoda seconded it. All in favor?
aye.
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 Any opposed? So that carries. Linda, just a quick question. Do we need to call a vote on closing this matter, 6.3?
No, the referral closes the matter.
Referral closes the matter. Thank you very much for the question.
But Mr. Chair, could I just add that we do have a third delegation waiting online, and I was just wondering if you and the committee wanted to consider hearing from Rebecca Beaton and then moving that item forward at 7.2 for consideration, or did you just want to go?
That was Rebecca Beaton?
Yes.
I have no concern moving item 7.2 up in the agenda to have that conversation now.
I'll move it.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Bob. Okay, so moving on from item 6.3 to item 7.2, we do have a delegate. Now this is delegation 5.3, Rebecca Beaton, resident, item 7.2 memorandum from Planner Heritage Planning, re-maintenance of the Aurora GO Station building. To the delegate, please state your name and be reminded that you have 5 minutes for your delegation. So go ahead, Rebecca.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Actually, thank you very much. But if you want to proceed with the agenda, I will wait it out, and I have no problem doing that. Okay.
Well, the floor is yours now, so we can proceed.
Okay. Okay. Carlton, I'd like to thank you for this staff report that you did on the train station. Obviously, it's clear that provincially and federally, there is no legislation in place to maintain these buildings. I have confirmation of that actually as well from the President, Chief Executive Officer for Parks Canada. I am talking with the Ontario Ministry with regards to perhaps implementing something as far as maintenance goes for these historic buildings. About 2 hours ago, I received the FOI that I had put in. So unfortunately, I was not able to get it to you in time for this meeting. I've briefly gone over 42 pages of maintenance and inspections for the building. And I can only find one item that was fixed on the building other than normal things of fixing a door sweep and replacing a door handle. So I'm going to go over it more thoroughly, and I'll send it through to Carlton so he can send you a copy of these reports, these 42 pages. I will be starting an open, which I did not know you could do, an open FOI, asking for all reports on the building every 30 days. And so we can get some more information on the building. I do not yet have a copy of a detailed copy of the tender the dollar amount of the work and the work that is to be done. And I'm expecting that shortly as well. I did invite an official from Metrolinx to attend this meeting. Had they agreed, I obviously would have asked if that was okay with everybody. Unfortunately, nobody from Metrolinx was able to attend this meeting and was not available this evening. You might be interested that Metrolinx has put up as of October the 28th on their blog a feature on the Aurora station, which you all might be interested in looking at. Hopefully we'll have more information for you for next meeting, and I'll be sending Carlton all of these replies federally, provincially, and the FOI, so you can all take a look at it. And that's really all I have to say on this right now. Any
Thank you very much.
Paul?
First, I'm going to ask for a motion to receive and refer the comments of the delegation to item 7.2.
I so move, John.
Thank you, John.
Second, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra. Do we have any questions or comments for the delegate at this time?
Yes, John, I have a question. Rebecca, John Green.
Yes, sir.
I received this newsletter, if you will, from Metrolinx, dated October the 30th. And it looks like I see this photograph, which I've seen before, of today showing the GO train and yesterday's view of the Aurora station with women, in this case, dressed in large flowery hats and long skirts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a wonderful photograph. I think it really does show then and now. But this fellow, Phil Pengelly, Metrolinx's senior manager for facilities, he says, I think I've read here, that they're going to start doing this in the, maintenance work is slated to start as early as the spring. So I guess they have it on their agenda, and the photographs I've seen in tonight's material that was sent, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. In your understanding, is all this going to be covered in the spring, or is it just taking a couple of little items?
Okay, the entire building is to be rehabilitated. The email that you received is the blog that they have done this feature on the Aurora station. And the gentleman that you referred to, who is the station manager, he was specifically invited. You'll notice that there's a quote about how that attributed to him on the maintenance of these historic sites. And since he is the station manager, I thought it might be appropriate to invite him. And he was unable to attend. But the pictures you're referring to are is the blog that they did on October the 28th.
Okay. So it looks as if they're willing, or they've planned to start this maintenance in the spring for this station.
I can confirm that it will begin in the spring, and that they are currently, the tender is closed, and that they are looking at several companies to begin this work.
Okay, it's just that the statement here is maintenance work is slated to start as early as the spring. Anyway, just some input there. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, John. Do we have any more questions or comments for the delegate this evening?
I have a comment through Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Sandra.
I just wanted to say thank you very much, Ms. Beaton, for delegating this evening and keeping this in the forefront. It's something that we don't want to lose sight of, and I really appreciate your championing this. And I'm looking forward to understanding that information you received to see exactly, what the policies are to keep this national historic building in good shape, and to see if there's anything we can do locally to help that. So I'll be digging into that a little bit further as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comment? So I will call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that carries. So moving on to item 7.2, memorandum from the planner, heritage planning, remaintenance of the Aurora Go Station building. Motion is that the memorandum regarding maintenance of the Aurora Go Station building be received for information. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion on the floor for discussion?
So move.
Thank you, Bob. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Neil. Would staff like to speak to the item?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a quick overview about this memo. At the last Heritage Committee meeting, the committee received a delegation request from Rebecca expressing concern over the lack of maintenance of the Aurora Go Station building, which is a Part 3 provincial heritage building. The committee asked staff to investigate what mechanisms are currently available to protect the provincial heritage building, and whether it is possible to designate the property under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Acts. So staff have consulted with the legal departments, and staff found out that the provincial heritage properties are not subject to designation by a local municipality under the Ontario Heritage Acts. Unfortunately, the town really has no jurisdiction over protection of provincial heritage building. However, the building is subject to the guidelines for conservation of provincial heritage properties, which is the guidelines that was prepared by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture, and Sports. And based on these standards, the public body that owns the building is responsible for maintaining the heritage attributes of the building. However, this is a self-regulating mechanism. The ministry is not responsible for any enforcement duties. So any non-compliance with the standards should be reported to Metrolinx. So staff have reached out to Metrolinx and was told that they are aware of the deteriorating condition of the building. And exactly like what Rebecca mentioned, Metrolinx is undergoing a tender process to retain a contractor to perform maintenance work on the Aurora Go Station building. The work is scheduled to begin as early as spring 2021, as mentioned by Bob. So staff will continue to monitor the situation and will report back to the Heritage Committee should any information becomes available.
Thank you, Carlson. Does the committee have any questions or comments on this matter? Okay. Well, if there are no further comments, I'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? And that motion carries. We'll be moving back on the agenda to item 6.4, matter for consideration. HAC 20-013 Heritage Permit application for 15032 Yonge Street. One, that the report number HAC 20-013 be received, and that the Heritage Advisory Committee comments regarding Heritage Permit application file HPA-2019-07 for the removal of 12 louvered window shutters on the Reuben J. Kennedy House at 15032 Yonge Street be received and referred to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. May I have a mover on this? May I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion on the floor for discussion?
I'll move it.
Matthew.
Neil.
Thank you, Neil. Second? Do we have someone to second this motion to put it on the floor for discussion?
Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Would staff like to speak to the item prior to discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item relates to Heritage Permit application, HPA 2019-07, to allow the removal of 12 window shutters on the Reuben J. Kennedy House building at 15032 Yonge Streets. So in February 2020, Council deferred this application as per Heritage Committee's recommendation to provide the applicants an opportunity to contact a heritage restoration consultant to assess the condition of the shutters and explore repair options. However, due to the current pandemic situation, staff were advised by the applicants that many heritage consultants are currently not available. And under the Heritage Act, the town only has 90 days to make a decision on this type of application. Otherwise, the application would automatically be approved. Now, the application has already been extended once by council in February 2020, and then a second time by the mayor with his delegated authority. Unfortunately, the applicant still cannot finish the assessment work because he still cannot find any heritage restoration consultant. Now, December 31st is the final deadline to make a decision on this application. Staff do not recommend any further extension for this application. Staff actually recommend this application be denied to terminate the process. This would actually give the applicants unrestricted time to work with a heritage restoration consultant to prepare the damage assessment report. And as noted in the staff report, the town does not charge a fee for heritage permit application. So the applicant can always come back to reapply once the damage assessment report has been completed. And that concludes my overview.
Thank you, Carlson. Does the committee have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, my comment would be I support staff's position.
Thank you, Bob. I as well feel very strongly in this matter and supporting staff's recommendation to refuse this. Any others? Questions, comments, positions?
Neil here, if I can go, or?
Go ahead, Neil. Yeah, please proceed.
Okay, so yeah, I support the staff recommendation, but I have a question, and I have a concern and a question. And my concern is that the shutters will further deteriorate. I know that some are okay and some are not great, and I think some are also missing. So inevitably, there needs to be something done, and something, part of that something is going to be replacement. The other part of it may be repair, and the other third component could be restoration. But by putting this, basically now back in the hands of at the discretion of the owner, I'm concerned that they'll just deteriorate further until they're no longer around or they're falling apart and not recognizable. Maybe it's not worth doing, but I do have that concern. I'm wondering if maybe we should just say remove them all, because they are the old style shutters that basically the hinges, you just lift them off the hinges. They just pop on and off, and store them. And until somebody can go in and assess them, they should be, maybe somebody from the town, maybe Carlson, can oversee this process, and they should be numbered. This should be treated very professionally, and having experience not as a conservator but working with conservators in my career, I know that there are things can be restored, but you can also replicate them, and any replacement should be replicated. But we should have a system in which we protect what's okay to reuse. And I just feel like this house has been sort of a project as long as I've lived in this town. And I think I had a conversation with Sandra yesterday about it, and it may have been going on longer than the 4 years that I've lived here. I don't want deterioration to continue. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to avoid just a messier situation in the next couple of years, whereby we have no choice but to allow them to be removed and disregarded, or removed and replaced with prefabricated shutters, or we start losing parts of them. I think it's important that it's treated with the respect that it deserves, and we follow some process to preserve them in the meantime. protect them. Protect them is a better word. And so at the end of the day, I support the motion, but I wonder if there's something more, an extra step we can take while this process continues.
So Neil, on your conversation with Sandra, was it broader than the shutters, and was it to the property in general, or is it just your concern around the shutters and doing more to protect?
I can.
Mr. Chair, the shutters were the primary concern, although we discussed the house in general. This man has come to the previous committee last term and asked us to recommend what materials he would use on an addition to the property. And so we made he's conscientious. He's restored 4 or 5 chimneys that are on the property using a similar brick, but replicating the heritage style of the chimney, which isn't the most the most efficient way to build a chimney in modern day, but he has complied with that. So I think that he has the best intentions here. I don't know what the issue is and why there's nobody in there. There's no tenants in there. There's nobody living in there. There's no business. It's just a constant site, and it's currently kept fairly clean and safe. But my concern now is the shutters, and knowing that he may want to just remove them as his ultimate end game, I think that maybe we should give him some good advice and some good, clear direction on what we want to see as an outcome here, rather than just sort of handing it off and saying, figure it out and let us know. Those shutters to replace them, it's probably going to be a costly venture, getting a carpenter to recreate them. I am of the mind that they need to be, if they are replacing them, they need to be done the way they are, because that is a feature. And, they are a mechanical element of that house, a very low-tech mechanical element, but louvered shutters were regulating airflow. They were also, used for privacy, protection during storms. But the fact that the louvers actually move around, that was for light and for airflow. And so I think it's an important thing that we get this right. It's a beautiful home and these contribute to that as well. So mostly the concern was the shutters. Thank you.
No, thanks for that clarification, Neil.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Bob.
I don't disagree with what Neil is suggesting, but my thinking is that sometimes when things are removed, they tend to get lost. So if we were to have Carlson or go forward on removing them, I would hope that there's some sort of penalty if they were to be lost, some ultimatum or some contract or some written agreement that puts the onus on them being stored in a preserved way. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. Carlson, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sure. I mean, staff can definitely have a discussion with the owner about this. The owner has been very cooperative with the town in the past, and I'm confident that they will be willing to store temporarily, remove the shutters and store them at a safe location. In terms of Bob's concern, although the shutters have been removed, they are still a heritage attributes identified in the heritage designation bylaw. So technically, it is still subject to the protection of the heritage property standard bylaw. So if they do lose it, then that would be a violation of the heritage property standard bylaw, and the town may take legal action for that.
Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification, Carl.
Mr. Chair, it's Sandra, just a quick comment as well.
Yes, please.
Through Mr. Chair, just thank you very much, Neil and Bob, for those comments. Absolutely, I've been watching this place for a long time, and I really want to ensure that we have it preserved as best as possible. To you, Mr. Chair, to Carlson, do you think if the owner has a tough time trying to figure out where to store these things, do we have any space in our salvaged items now at the JOC that we could, house them for him, just in case he has a problem trying to protect them in the meantime. I know it's probably an extra step, but I'm just really worried that they will go missing. And this home is really beautiful, and it's in a prominent spot in Aurora. So just a comment, maybe if you can't answer that, if you want to take it back and see if there's anything we can do, that would be amazing.
Comment for consideration, Carlson. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the town does have a storage space at a GOC center. If the applicants wants to temporarily remove these shutters, we can definitely make arrangement to have them stored in our facility. I agree with Councillor Humphries. This would be probably a safer way to keep track of the shutters, but that's something I still need to have discussion with the owner first. Once I have updates from the owner, I will report back to the Heritage Committee.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Did I make a comment through you, Mr. Chair? It's Matthew.
Yep. Go ahead, Matt.
I've had an opportunity to take a look at this building a number of times, and I noticed that the shutters themselves are in very poor condition, and I've done a lot of restoration work in my renovation work, and I'm concerned that to get this guy to completely restore these is going to be extremely expensive. Some of them don't look like they can even be really repaired. They'd have to be replaced. My concern is that if we ask him to remove them while we consider how we're going to repair them, this could be years in the making. Now, I like the fact that they function. They operate as louvered shutters. And they do open and close as they should. Now, there are manufacturers, there's one locally in Bradford that makes that exact shutter out of wood in a historical context, exactly like what you see there. They're very expensive, but still probably a fraction of what it would cost for him to restore them. And I'm not sure, really, when I look at these shutters, that you're even going to be able to restore them. It will probably be a remake of what's there anyway. Most of it will probably be removed and remade. So is there any real benefit to the historical context by using those actual shutters versus having him replace them with historical shutters? Historical new shutters, let's say. I guess that's a question to everybody as well as Carlson.
So on that,
I'll speak to that.
Point,
okay.
No, please proceed. Was that Neil? Go ahead.
Yeah, who's that? Is that Jeff? No,
yeah,
I've already spoken, so you please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So Matthew, I think that's a great idea. Now, these shutters, you'll notice that they actually are shaped to fit into the window opening, and I don't know if that company will do custom.
They're located in.
They will come and measure the window and the radius of the lintel and all that.
Yeah, they'll replicate exactly what's there. These are not subdivision style shutters. They manufacture custom shutters. They run about somewhere between $750 and $1,000 a shutter. So it's about $2,000 per window, and they're all made out of red hardwood, and they're extremely well made. And they will curve them. They'll operate them. They'll give you the hardware. They do everything, and the price goes up from there. But I'm just thinking, like in cases of timing. I mean, I can see this thing. Okay, we'll take them. We'll store them. It could be 5 years before you ever see them again. Instead,
well, I mean, that's more or less what I was suggesting, not knowing if any were actually okay. And by restoration, I meant, just maybe sanding them a bit and giving them a new paint job and replacing what needed. Because I know that there's one missing, at least from what I can see. I just wanted to, and I think that's the assessment that can be made when they're removed, and those can be used as templates. Should they all need replacing, then we have all the originals for templating.
That's a
for
great
new
idea,
ones.
because that would certainly make the job of the guy building the new ones much easier if you said this is exactly what they need to be like. And,
well, I mean, Carlson, can we suggest this to him, that he just get an estimate for new ones? And we haven't decided whether this is the best course of action, but does he need to get a heritage consultant to assess these? Is that a necessary step? Because I agree with Matthew. We kind of need to rip this Band-Aid off because it's gone on too long, and any longer is, just painful
You
and
don't
could
wanna
end up.
punish the guy and make him have to spend 20 grand restoring these shutters. I mean, that's,
Well, I wouldn't suggest that. There's a point where it's not worth doing, but I agree that if we can get new ones that are operational, because that's a fundamental part of this, is that the hinges are there. Those hinges are, they're the male part is in the masonry, and
Yep.
the female part is on the shutter, so they can be reused. And
yeah, they would probably reuse the hardware and then just
Yeah.
replicate right off of the template of the existing shutter. That would be my guess as to
Yeah.
how they would do it. And that would certainly be more expedient from a timing point of view, and probably more cost effective. And you'd have a product that would last longer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I
that
should
was,
get that name from you.
thank you.
So through you, Mr. Chair, that goes back to the discussion we had in February. Although, yes, there are certain shutters that are in very, very poor condition, very likely will not be able to be repaired. But there are some shutters at the same time that only have minor deterioration. So that's why we are requesting the applicants to consult a heritage restoration consultant to confirm whether these shutters can be repaired or not. For the ones that cannot be repaired, yes, they can be replaced, and effort should be made to replicate the shutters as closest to the original as possible. This is also something that's permitted by the Heritage Property Standard Bylaw. But before we take this step, before we decide to replace these shutters, I think we need to have that confirmation from the Heritage Restoration Consultant confirming that indeed these shutters are not repairable.
Thanks, Carlson. So essentially what we're doing is we're refusing the current application in the hopes that he does engage with a heritage consultant to come back with a plan to either replace or restore the current shutters.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct, because if we don't make a decision by December 31st, the application would automatically be approved under the Heritage Acts. So that's why it's very, very important that we make this decision right now to terminate the process for this application. This would actually help the applicant, because that way they have unrestricted time to work on this, work with the Heritage Restoration Consultant or the contractor.
Okay. Well, I think there's been some very productive discussion on this matter and some options for the homeowner to consider. Are there any other questions or comments or matters that we'd like to discuss on this item? And Carlson, I'm assuming that the meeting minutes will reflect Matthew's recommendation and Neil's concurrence, and those will be shared with the homeowner. But at this point in time, unless there are any more questions or comments, I'm ready to move this forward to a vote, but I'll give anybody one more opportunity. Okay. So no further comments, I'll call the vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? None opposed, so that carries. Moving to item 6.5, HAC 20-014, request to remove a property from the Aurora Register of Properties of Cultural Heritage Value or Interest, 93 Tyler Street. Item number 1, that the report HAC 20-014 be received, and that the Heritage Advisory Committee comments regarding the delisting of 93 Tyler Street be received and referred to staff for consideration and action as appropriate. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion on the floor for discussion?
So move.
I'll second. Matthew.
I think that was John first and Matthew second.
Or Bob first.
Sorry, Bob.
That's okay.
That's twice.
Would staff like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the owner of 93 Tyler Street submitted an application to remove the property from the town's heritage register so they can demolish the existing building and construct a new single detached dwelling. The property was evaluated by the Heritage Committee's working group on October 15th, 2020. and the score puts the property in the Group 3 category, suggesting that it is not worthy of heritage designation. Therefore, staff recommend that the property be removed from the Heritage Register as per the evaluation undertaken by the working group.
Thank you, Carlson. Does the committee have any questions or comments?
Just given the motion, I'll make a comment that I support the delisting based on the evaluation score.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments or questions on this matter?
I have a comment. I wasn't available to do the evaluation when it happened, unfortunately. And I know that there were pictures in the package of, mold and all kinds of, horrible situations going on inside. Maybe it's a question to Carlson, but I mean, we make these decisions based on photographs, or we make these evaluations, I should say, based on photographs. But there's nothing stopping somebody, and I'm not suggesting in this case it happens, but we've seen before where they come in and they want to delist so they can demolish, and they say, it's structurally unsound, but nobody's made a structural assessment. In this case, we don't have basically a health report or something, and so I know that's not required, but sometimes I'm a little concerned that, they have an end. It's just a means to an end to demolish something. I'm sure in this case it was. The house was sat empty for 10 years. And unfortunately, the demolition by neglect or decay or whatever it is this doesn't qualify for that, not being designated. But it's unfortunate that these houses fall into disrepair because, it's still could have been a worthy house to save from an architectural point of view. And the other comment I want to make is that maybe I disagree a little bit, but I'm not going to make a fuss about it, about the historical evaluation and the man who lived there, Mr. Welsh, I think his name was, being a very prominent scientist. And I think that, he's from Aurora. He was very accomplished in his field. He was noted for, making the science department at U of T quite prominent nationally. In his time there, he also worked for the military during the Second World War. My father was in the Navy, and maybe some of the research he did affected how my father did his job during that time. So I feel like we have, through this evaluation, diminished his historical importance locally. And I know that his accomplishments weren't local necessarily, but he was a local boy who was educated locally, who went on to achieve great things in his field of study. And I just hope that the record showing that he wasn't important doesn't diminish his importance. And it's always I think our heritage is still, it'll always be the stories we have. But when we have a record from, a property evaluation showing that, maybe he wasn't that important, I don't think that that's a fair assessment. And I would have scored him higher, personally. I would have maybe argued that point at the time. I missed my opportunity, but I just wanted to voice that now, that I think that it's something that we can still be proud of in terms of our local history. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Any other members of the committee want to provide comments? Anybody who visited the property as part of the working group? Does staff have any other comments on this matter?
To you, Mr. Chair, staff do not have any further comments.
Okay, I'll put it out there one more time to the committee. Any questions or comments? Okay, I'll call a vote. If there are no further comments, all in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that matter carries. Moving ahead to agenda item 6.6, verbal update from the planner, Heritage Planning, reappointment to steering committee for comprehensive review of town's heritage register. Number one, that verbal update regarding the appointment of the members of the steering committee for the comprehensive review of the town's heritage register be received, and that the Heritage Advisory Committee appoint 3 of its members to the steering committee for the comprehensive review of the town's heritage register. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion on the floor for discussion?
So moved, John.
Thank you, John. Second?
Bob, second.
Thank you, Bob. And I'll turn it over to staff to provide an update on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the town is about to begin the project for the comprehensive review of the town's heritage register. And as per the terms of reference approved by council, the town will need to form a steering committee to provide direction and recommendation on the project. And the steering committee should comprise of at least 3 members of the Heritage Advisory Committee and 2 councillors. So that's why tonight staff are asking the Heritage Advisory Committee to appoint 3 of its members to the steering committee for this project.
Thank you, Carlson. Does the committee have any questions or comments on this matter?
Yes, John here. Carlson, can you give a little more detail on the responsibilities of these 3 appointees?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so this project is going to be a multi-year project. It may take a year or 2 to complete. And throughout the process, staff and the consultant will have regular meetings with the steering committee to provide them updates on the progress of the reports. And the steering committee is supposed to provide direction, recommendation, and whether the project is moving towards the right direction. And also the intent is to make the process smoother, because the steering committee will consist of members from the Heritage Committee and also the members from council. So when it goes to Heritage Committee meetings or council meetings, some of the items of the project would have already been discussed by some of the members from council and Heritage Committee. At this point, we're still very early in the process. There may be some more details that will become available in terms of the role of the steering committee. We will be having a kickoff meeting very soon, perhaps sometime in November, maybe early December. And at that meeting, we will have further discussion that will define the roles of the steering committee members and provide more information requested by any of the committee members.
Thank you, Carlson.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Bob.
Through you to Carlson, is there a sense of whether the meetings would be daytime or evening?
Through you, Mr. Chair, usually we will set up before we set up a meeting, we will engage all the committee members to get their availability. If the committee members prefer daytime, we will definitely be able to accommodate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from committee members?
Jeff, are we looking for volunteers?
I'm going to move to that if there are no other questions. If we're looking for, if there are any nominations or volunteers for the appointment of 3 committee members to the steering committee?
I would be very interested to be a member.
Okay.
I would like to be a member also.
Okay, so that's Bob and Hoda. Neil, did I hear you come in there?
You did not. No. But I would be willing to do it if I could forfeit my position on the evaluation committee, which probably would be lessened anyway, but I'm a little reluctant to take on too many of these, as I wasn't able to make the last meeting of the evaluation committee, so, or the subgroup.
I'm now in what seems to be a permanent work from home environment. So my time has been freed up during the day when the Working Group Evaluation Committee does meet. So there could be a possible solution there.
Oh, so you would take, well, if nobody else wants it, then, and you're willing to take the evaluation group, then I'm pretty sure I can do it. I mean, I'd be interested to do it. I'm willing. So unless someone else wants it, and I'm willing to give someone else the opportunity if they choose. And
yeah, go ahead, Neil.
No, that's it. That's all.
Okay. Any other interest from committee members? Silence. Okay. Well, we have confirmed Bob and Hoda. Neil, perhaps we can continue the discussion and maybe take this offline and then regroup with Carlson and provide, a confirmation of this. Unless Carlson.
Between you and I. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless Carlson, you require 3 names this evening.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, I stepped away, just came back. If you're looking for another member for evaluation team, I'd be interested. I don't know if that's allowed, but I'm interested.
I think that I'm not sure about the procedural matter and if that is allowed or not, Sandra, but between you and I'm sure we can sort that out if that frees up some time for Neil to make himself available to participate in this committee. So just back to staff, Carlson, do you require 3 names tonight, or are you okay with 2 and then a confirmation in the next couple of days if Neil's able to step forward?
Through Mr. Chair, if I can have the confirmation sometimes this week, that would be great, because we are looking to schedule that kickoff meeting with the consultant as early as possible. So if I can have that information this week, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. Is that okay, Neil?
Yeah, we'll work it out and we'll let Carlson know. Yep.
Sounds great. And thank you, Sandra.
Okay.
And then Sandra will be in touch as well. And then maybe Sandra, if you can just confirm whether or not there's any conflict, if there are any issues with you participating in the evaluation working group as well in the next couple of days, that would be great.
Sure, that's you, Mr. Chair. I was on it before as a council.
Oh, okay.
So there wasn't
Perfect.
any issues, not last term, the term before. So I don't think
There's
there's any
experience.
I'll double check.
Sorry, Bob?
I was going to say she has experience, but we
Done it before.
kicked her off for a while.
They did. They kicked me off, but I'm forcing my way back.
Well, since this is being recorded, I'm not going to ask why. We'll deal with that offline.
Had enough of me.
All right. Well, if there are no further comments on this matter, I'll call a vote. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. Moving ahead to agenda item number 7, informational items. 7.1, memorandum from planner rebuilding permit application for 103 Edward Street. That the memorandum regarding building permit application for 103 Edward Street be received for information. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the motion on the floor for discussion?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay, or Neil, then Matthew. Would staff like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this relates to a building permit application to permit the construction of a new dwelling at 103 Edward Street. The property is currently listed on the town's heritage register as a non-designated property. So the previous building that existed has already been destroyed by a fire, so the property is currently vacant. Normally, staff would meet with the heritage working group to score the property before a building permit can be issued. However, given that the building no longer exists, I consulted the heritage working group and they are of the opinion that the property is not worthy of destination without doing a heritage evaluation. So the working group's decision was circulated to the Heritage Committee members in October 2020, and no comments were received. And because of that, the applicant was granted permission to continue with his building permit application. So this property will remain listed pending the completion of the comprehensive review of the Heritage Register. So this is just an information memo for the committee members' information and for the public record.
Thank you, Carlson. Does the committee have any questions or comments on this matter? Okay. If there are no further comments or questions, or none to begin with, I'll call a vote on the matter. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, so that motion carries. And Linda, I know there were a number of agendas that were sent out, but I believe that is it for this evening. I haven't missed anything.
Nope.
Thank you
That's
very
it.
much.
Good job.
Agenda item number 8, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Ah,
No, we're staying.
yeah.
I'd like to put a motion forward that the chair will be leaving and the rest of the group
So
may
will
stay.
I.
I will motion to adjourn.
Motion
Second,
to adjourn by Sandra. Second, was that Bob?
it was.
Thank you, Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time tonight and another productive meeting.
Great meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Mr. Chair.
Good job,
Thank you,
Mr.
everyone, for your contributions.
Chairman.
Safe drive home.
Thanks,
Stay
everyone.
healthy.